In early February of 1983, a young mother, Ora Owens, woke up to every woman's worst nightmare. A man standing over her bed, watching her as she slept, as she was home alone with her young children. After leaping out of bed to try to run for help, the stranger caught up to her, dragging her back into her bedroom and violently attacking her. In the middle of the attack, her 4-year-old son Mitchell walked in. He bravely said to the assailant, "You're hurting my mom, and I'm going to tell." After that, Ora was knocked unconscious. Miraculously, she was found still clinging to life and rushed to the hospital. When she awoke, her life was forever shattered when she learned that her other 2 boys were found at the house, but that her son Mitchell was gone. 43 years have passed without any answers as to who tried to kill her that night and what happened to her young son. I'm so grateful that Ora has entrusted me with her story, and it's a responsibility that I do not take lightly. In this episode, she sits down with me to tell her story fully for the first time publicly on this type of platform. We will tell you more about Mitchell and more about the case than just the scant information in newspaper clippings. And in the end, you'll hear where the case stands and where there are calls to action. Because what once seemed like an impossible case to solve may now have some light at the end of the tunnel. I'm your host, Megan, and each week on A Simpler Time True Crime, I cover older unsolved cases and challenge the idea that a simpler time means a safer time. This week, I'm bringing to you the unsolved attempted murder of Ora Owens and the abduction of her son Mitchell. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to again thank Ora for sitting down with me and sharing her story. I had encountered Mitchell's case before and even looked at some of the old articles. When one of my listeners suggested I cover the case, I dug deeper and found that there was not a ton of articles and information out there about his case, despite how horrific the circumstances were. I wanted to share the case on my podcast, but I felt that I wanted to fill in some of the many blanks that I found while researching it. I wanted to know more about Mitchell and Ora than just that night. And so I stumbled into an advocacy post on social media from Ora's niece. I figured I would reach out to her first because Ora hadn't been interviewed on podcasts before that I could tell, and I wasn't sure if she was even in a space where she wanted to talk about the case, and that answer would have been perfectly understandable to me. So I reached out to her niece and basically said, "Hey, I saw your advocacy. If anyone in your family would want to speak to me about Mitchell's case, I'd love to put an episode together to get renewed coverage." She thanked me, and within a day, she had put me in touch with her Aunt Ora. In our first phone conversation, Ora told me that she had prayed on it and that it was time to share her story, in her words, and that as the clock continues to tick, she wants a renewed push for information in Mitchell's case so that she has answers once and for all. So for the last month, we've been meeting and talking and even putting out some videos on social media to gain traction. And today, we're going to tell you the full picture. So please share this episode far and wide, comment any thoughts or suggestions you have, and just anything that will help get Mitchell's story out there to the masses. We are game. And with that, let's get into it. Mitchell Dion Owens was born on November 21st, 1978, to his mother Ora Owens and big brother Antoine, who was a toddler at the time.
Okay, he came, and I literally was living in an apartment building that the nearest phone was about maybe half a block away, and I didn't have a phone at the time. Wasn't like cell phone days. So I literally had to get up out my bed, put some shoes on, drag my pregnant butt across the street for about a mile, half a mile, maybe about a mile, because it's about a half a mile out and a half a mile back. By the time I made it back, the ambulance was already there at the house, and I'm hollering in the corner, "Here I am! Here I am!" So I ended up going to the hospital. My sister worked at the hospital, so I knew somebody would be there for me. And I didn't have a phone at the time, like I said, to call my mom. Then I had to wait until I got to the hospital. So as soon as there, I said, "Could you get my sister Dolores? Could you get my sister Dolores?" So they found my sister. My sister called my mom, and next thing you know, everybody's there, and he's popping out a few hours later.
I told Ora how much of a tough cookie she was walking several blocks in labor like that. She just said, hey, I didn't have a choice. But still, I think she was tough. When she got home with Mitchell, she found out that he had a complicated skin condition, a mixture of a water allergy and psoriasis. I actually looked this up because I had never heard of a water allergy before, but it's true. It's these rare cases where infants can have issues with tap water and probably some of the chemicals in it. And they also have that real patchy psoriasis, which was less known about at the time.
But anyway, once he came home, I found out my baby was allergic to water. Allergic to water. I never heard anything. I literally had to buy this special soap and liquid to bathe him with because his arm, his legs, and his back was like, um, they call it psoriasis today, but it was something I had never seen. Didn't know what psoriasis was. All I know is water made it worse. Water made it crack and all this good stuff. So anyway, we got past all that.
Now, backing up the timeline just for a bit, Ora had moved to Menlo Park, California as a teenager.
We moved there in 73. Yeah, we moved there in 73. My mom followed my sisters out here. My sisters, I think, came out here because my stepdad was out here. I think I was about 15 when we got here. Nice sunny place, no snow. Was absolutely loving it. Went to Green Oaks, then Menlo Atherton. Graduated Menlo Atherton High School, continuation school. Actually, got my own place, got a job. Thought I was doing what I was supposed to do.
Ora gave birth to her first son, Antoine, as a teen. When she met Mitchell's father, she thought at first that they had really hit it off, but their relationship didn't last. She would end up having one more son, Marte, who was born when Mitchell was 3. When Ora and I spoke, she told me she didn't date very much. She wasn't big into the social scene. She mostly hung out with her family. So when she had Marte and the relationship with his father didn't work out, she thought to herself a little bit, how did I get here? This was different than I expected. She had always thought she would be someone who would settle down, get married, have kids, and now she was a single mom of 3 in her early 20s. But she said she made the decision to leave Marte's father and raise her kids alone when Marte was an infant because she didn't like the trend she was seeing for the path towards the environment she would be raising them in.
I can't do the lying. I can't have nobody selling drugs around me. But I don't know what makes you want to hang out on the streets. I can't do it. I have boys. I can't do it. So I moved.
And so she found a nice 2-bedroom apartment on Pierce Road in Menlo Park, California. This is the place her attack would occur just a month after she moved in. Now, she had secured the place right after Mitchell had turned 4 and Marte had turned 1 in November of 1982. However, she was raising the boys full time, so understandably, at that time, the only income she was getting was government assistance, so money was really tight. So she got the apartment, but moving in took phases. But it was okay because she had a huge family and they all helped each other out.
So we spent Christmas at my sister's. it was just easier. It was always close because it was enough of us that we really didn't need outsiders. It was I had what, three sisters and four brothers, and each one of us had anywhere from three to five kids at the time. So it was enough of us.
In our conversations, Ora spoke of her big family a lot, and you can tell just how much joy it brought her to raise her kids alongside all of their cousins and just always having get togethers with tons of kids running around. And the dynamic in her own house was boisterous but adorable. And something you should know is that Mitchell and his big brother Antoine were incredibly close, somewhat inseparable.
Come to find out, Antoine and him was like this. You cannot do anything for one that you didn't do for the other. They always had their own bed, but every morning I wake up, one is in the bed with the other.
If you hear Ora speak, sometimes she will call Mitchell Michael, and you'll see that in old newspaper articles too. You see, Michael was Mitchell's nickname, and it all came from a speech impediment that Antoine had. And from there, a nickname was born.
Well, he had the Michael nickname because the Antoine had a speech impediment and he couldn't say it. So he started calling him Michael. And then when that wasn't suffice, everybody kept saying his name wasn't Michael, this, that, and the other. He started calling him Gigi. Only Antoine called him Gigi.
Mitchell used to be known as the translator for Antoine. Anytime someone couldn't understand him, he would say things like, "You heard him, he said." Ora recalled one family get together where not only did he do his translation for Antoine, he also mimicked Ora by putting his hands on his hips and took a scolding tone with his cousins, to which Ora's siblings said, "Wow, he is trying to be just like you."
He always took up for Antoine because of his speech impediment. The cutest thing to me was one day they were in the hallway and they was playing. It was a few kids. We always had tons of kids. But it was a few kids in the hallway and they was playing Mama and Daddy and you listen to me. And my sister said it was me because the baby put his hands on his hips and got to shaking his little finger and said, "There ain't nobody here doing nothing but copying you." Right. Put his hand on his hip and said, "You heard what he said. He had so and so and so and so and so and so. Don't be acting like you don't know what he said."
One time, she recalled that Mitchell tried on his uncle's motorcycle helmet, not realizing just how big it was.
My brother came over my house and it was a motorcycle at the house and it happened to be a motorcycle helmet. And my brother put it on his head and he couldn't hold his head up. so, so he stand him up. As soon as my brother let him go, he hit the floor because he couldn't hold his head up. The helmet was just, he tried to hold the helmet up, but he couldn't stop laughing either.
And easily, my favorite story she told me about Mitchell is how he was a hide and seek champion.
Oh, and hide and go seek, he was actually fantastic at it. Boy scared me one day. He was playing hide and go seek, and I always had that regular door lock, handle lock, but I always had a big lock at the top, always up high so they couldn't reach. Ever since my first apartment, and Antoine got out once, and I was asleep. From that day on, I put two locks on the door. We was playing hide and go seek. I went upstairs and they was downstairs and I'm in the bedroom with the door closed so they can hide in either the other room, the bathroom, the kitchen, wherever they wanted to, just go hide. Anyway, they this child took all the dishes out the cabinet. Instead of putting them on the floor, he put them in the refrigerator and he got in the cabinet. So by not seeing no dishes out of place, I wouldn't have looked in the cabinet because I know it's full of dishes. So I got to looking behind the couch and under the bed, in the closet. And it's like, "Oh, you did this good. I can't find you." So I went in my room. Could he have snuck in my room when I came up? So now I'm getting scared because I done pretty much looked through the whole house and the door's locked and he's not. I found Antoine like 10 minutes ago. It's like, no. And then I just started saying, "Look, Michael, you're scaring me. Where you at? Cause did you go outside? Cause now I'm scared. I can't find you. You win. You got to come out." Only reason I found him is because I heard him snickering. He was laughing. So I followed the sound, opened up the cabinet, and it's like, where's the dishes? And he just laughed. They laughed, and he opened the refrigerator, all the dishes in the refrigerator.
That is absolutely hilarious, right? And I think most of us have had the universal experience of playing hide and seek with a child who can't help but giggle and give away their spot. But Mitchell did it just because his mom was finally giving up and he was so proud of himself for fooling her. So Ora had to spend the holidays with the boys living with her sister until she had enough money to get the lights turned on in the unit. And then she moved in with the boys to their apartment on Pierce Road in Menlo Park just after Christmas.
I had went out and bought an old TV from Salvation Army, got that in there, had the lights turned on. So after Christmas, and we decided after New Year's, we're just gonna go home. And that's what we did.
It was supposed to be their fresh start, and Ora was doing her thing, providing for and caring for her babies, making money stretch. And now she had furniture, food, a warm place to stay filled with love, and, as a little treat to herself, a secondhand TV to watch her shows on after she got the boys to bed. This new chapter would only be this way for a few weeks, until one night, all of their lives would change forever. February 2nd, 1983 was the day leading up to the overnight of the incident. It was a Wednesday, and it was an ordinary day for Ora. She took the boys and picked up a few groceries. She spent the evening with the kids and remembers doing their nighttime routine, one I'm sure many parents of young children listening can relate to.
Remember going grocery shopping. The last thing I really remember is them getting in the bathtub and it taking me forever for them to get out. Because once I got one out, the other one climbed back in. By the time I got the other one out and dried him off, the other one had climbed back in. And it's like, okay, guys, we can't do this.
After wrangling her tiny army of boys out of the bathtub, getting them in their pajamas, and off to bed, Ora crawled into bed to get off her feet and watch her show. But again, in the most relatable of things, she began to doze off while watching.
Me settling down to watch my favorite show, Elliot Ness, Mission Impossible. One of those, but I think it was Elliot Ness, if I'm not mistaken. The Untouchables. Just as I'm laying there getting ready to get settled in real good, there's a slight tap at the door. I go to the door. First, I look out the window because my window is right here. Then you take two more steps and the door is right there. So anyway, I look out the window, see it's an officer. Didn't dawn on me just to look to see if it was a police car or anything in the facilities. But honestly, if he depend on where he would park, if he didn't park right in the driveway, I wouldn't have seen the car anyway. But I seen the officer. I seen the officer dressed. So I opened the door. I don't have anything to hide. I'm not doing anything illegal. So I opened the door. He says about the purse that was reported stolen. I said, I'm sorry. I'm the only adult here. It's just me and my kids. So I didn't do it, and closed the door, locked it like I normally do, and went on back to my bed.
Ora has gone through this story many times in her head, and so because it's the first time you guys are hearing it, I just want to add in a few more details for context to you guys as listeners. So, this is roughly 11 p.m. ish on Wednesday the 2nd, just a few hours before she would have an unknown intruder enter her house. This was a white male police officer, or he was at the very least presenting in uniform to be one, and he said to Ora that he was following up on a stolen purse and that it had been reported missing by someone in her apartment. So she basically said, Not me, it's just me and my boys here, and I've never made a report on a stolen purse, so you must have the wrong house. Ora regrets saying that because if that man who was there was the one who came back, she told me she hates that she told him she lived alone as a female with her kids there, and she kicks herself for not vetting out his identity more or looking to see if there was a police car. But hindsight is so 2020, and I tried to reassure her of that. And nobody is responsible for what happened to her other than the man who committed that crime. It should be noted that in the papers from the 1980s, Menlo Park PD said, "We never sent an officer out that night following up on a stolen purse." So that's interesting to say the least. Because in that scenario, you either have a legitimate police officer who is using his badge and uniform for nefarious purposes, like lying about an investigation on a stolen purse, or you have someone who is impersonating a police officer. In my opinion, the only innocent explanation would be that it's a legitimate officer, somehow not Menlo Park, but responding to an address in Menlo Park, maybe because the purse was stolen in another town or jurisdiction, and that this officer happened to get the address wrong. But my issue is with that is that this is 11 p.m. It's still a weird time to follow up on a stolen purse. The timing of his visit to then what happened to Ora seems too much to be a coincidence. And no legit officer ever came forward and said, "Oh, that was me. Here's my innocent explanation." So Ora sent this officer on his way. She drifts back off to sleep. And this is what she recalls next. Now, this is a painful topic for Ora, and I gave her the option to not relive this if she didn't want to, that I could just summarize what was known about the attack. But she wanted to share what she could remember. So, first, I'll play for you what she told me and then give a little bit more information.
So it's like, okay, anyway, I go back to bed, and I'm assuming I done dozed off. Don't know how long. All I know is I had bought this TV from Salvation Army, and every time you pass by it, the volume went up. When the volume went up, I literally thought it was one of the kids coming to get in the bed with me. But that wouldn't have been normal. That'd have been normal if they'd have got up and gotten in bed with each other, but not getting up, coming to get in the bed with me. So as I open my eyes to see who it is, it's this person that's standing over me, look like he about 6, 7 feet tall, because I'm laying down. So of course, when they ask me how tall, first thing I'm gonna say, real tall, 6 feet and more, because that's what it looked like to me. So anyway, as I focus, I realize there's somebody in my room, so I jump up to run. As I run, I get to the end of the hall. Is when he catches me, dragging me back to my bedroom. I remember having a pair of shears, and I always kept them up on a nail to keep the kids from getting them. I remember trying to grab those shears to fight backwards. I don't know if I hit him. All I know is my arm. So anyway, I tried to grab the shears. My hand get pinned behind me, so I'm not moving it, but I'm being forced back to my room. I'm kicking, screaming as he pushes me on the bed. I remember seeing him reach for the phone. No, he struck me first. Then he reached for the phone. He hits me. I see my son come out the room and says, "You're hurting my mom. I'm going to tell." Next thing I know, the phone comes to my face, and that's all I remember.
So, just some key points here. Aura's attacker was a tall man, though, as she said, she couldn't tell how tall. He was white. She did not recognize him, and she only caught a glimpse of him for a second before her fight or flight kicked in. First flight, and then when he caught up to her, he began dragging her and attacking her from behind. And it was all kind of a blur as she's fighting with him, and she's not getting a good look at his face. Mitchell hears the commotion, and then boom, he strikes her, and it all goes black.
I wake up a few days later in the hospital. My mom, my sisters, police officers, and doctors, and all surrounding me. And I'm like wondering where the hell I am.
So this is the next thing that Ora remembers, but there was a lot leading up to this. By chance, Ora's landlord had come over to collect rent money from her that morning, and when he heard the children, but Ora did not answer the door, he decided to check on Ora, who he also considered as a friend. That's when he found Ora clinging to life with a telephone cord tightly wrapped around her throat. The landlord panicked and called for help. When paramedics arrived, they began life-saving measures on Ora, and they actually cut her skin while removing the tightly wrapped telephone cord. Ora was rushed to the hospital, where she remained in and out of consciousness for days. When she fully woke up, she was disoriented, as I mentioned. And then she was delivered the absolute worst news of her life.
And it's like my mom got this look on her face that I just can't place. And she goes, baby, what was the kids? It's like, what you mean, what was the kids? They was at home, they in the house. And she looks and like a tear just there. And it's like, Mom, what's the matter? What's the matter? She go, Michael's not there. And it's like, what you mean Michael's not there? My first reaction is to get up and go see. I I go to get up, I can't even walk. I hit the floor. I did not realize my face was swollen. I had a scar on my throat, but they said the scar was from the doctors cutting the telephone cord out from around my throat. I just remember after they tried to start asking me questions, having flashback, fighting people. So then they took me to the psychiatrist over at Stanford and did all these tests. And they tried to explain to me that it was part of the TV show that I was watching, that it was the ambulance and the police that was attending me after the fact. Well, I don't know if all that's true or any of that's true. All I can go by is what I remember. And if that's fed into what I remember, that's what happened, because that's what fed into what I remember.
So, what you heard there is something Ora and I kept revisiting. But I want to acknowledge one piece of it first is that she was feeling anxious about the fact that that officer had visited that night and that weird, otherwise coincidence. And she felt that every time she would try to bring any piece of law enforcement involvement into it, that they would really kind of shush her away from that theory. But one thing is, Ora knows full stop to solve this case, there has to be some sort of physical evidence because she suffered not only physical injuries and memory issues from the brutal beating she took and strangulation, she also sustained trauma. So she says when first responders came, she doesn't have memory of them working on her, but that there could have been EMTs, law enforcement there. She possibly could have seen them or fought with them during her confusion. She knows it's possible that she could blur faces with her attackers. She just doesn't know, and she wants to be clear that she never pretends to. She just remembers what she remembers. But she has always relayed the same exact story to law enforcement over the years. And she does remember some specific things about her attacker that stick out specific to when he was standing over her bed.
I don't remember a smell, but what I do vaguely remember was like his hair like greased or just slicked back type of thing. I don't remember a greasy type smell or anything. Yeah, I don't his hair kind of greasy back. I remember him having looked like a dog, a homemade tattoo on his arm. Like it looked like like a dog, like a homemade dog, like a kid drew her.
I asked her if she thought it could be maybe a prison tattoo, and she said yes, she'd thought of that over the years. At the time, there was a composite sketch released, and I'll have it on the Instagram page. Reporting in the papers at the time described the man who attacked Ora as around 6'1" in his late 20s or early 30s in 1983, 175 to 180 pounds, with brown hair, blue eyes, a mustache, body odor, and a bit of a pot belly. I did ask Ora, as you probably heard at the beginning of that clip, if she remembers any of that body odor, because there actually were sexual predators operating in California at this time who the paper would talk about the body odor. And she can't recall at this point anything about that. So here's Ora surviving her ordeal, only to have her beautiful son go missing. And the initial response from law enforcement angered her and the family, and it's understandable. They marked Mitchell as a runaway to start, at 4 years old. I guess the theory was that when he came in and confronted the attacker, that maybe he ran out of the apartment to get away. But something to consider is that this would have been around 3:30 or 4 in the morning, just pitch black outside. And this is a 4-year-old boy whose default is to crawl into bed with his big brother. There was also these possible witness sightings of Mitchell on a bike, but he didn't even own one. Ora would tell me that, they couldn't even afford to keep the lights on half the time. She certainly couldn't afford to get him a bike, and he didn't know how to ride one, so he wasn't riding off on a bike. Now, I don't want to say that police weren't looking for Mitchell at all. They were. I will link some newspaper articles, but it was not front page news, nor was it a big media blast. Of course, being 1983, this was before Amber Alerts and the way abductions are handled now. But again, at the time, despite what happened to Ora, they were defaulting to the likelihood that Mitchell had run away and he was just hiding versus an abduction, which to me is the opposite in terms of reasonable explanations. On February 10th, 1983, reporting in the San Francisco Examiner indicated that police were searching the mudflats underneath the Dumbarton Bridge, operating off a TIF, but that they found no signs of Mitchell. The search lasted for about 2 hours and included a helicopter crew. As Ora was in the hospital for all of those early days, she realized she had a long road ahead of her.
Actually, one doctor told me I wasn't going to use my arm anymore. And it's like, I'm left-handed. That's unacceptable. Then I had to learn how to walk. It took me a couple of weeks to get the motor started. It just like it's like you went to sleep for about a year and you woke up and it's like, okay, what was I doing? How did I do it? How come I can't just do it just because I'm up? I had to learn and see it and do it all over again.
The day Ora was released from the hospital, she had a real gut punch. You see, she had previously had pictures done of the boys at the local grocery store where they offered photography. The photos were taken just a few days before Mitchell's abduction. What was supposed to be a rare splurge to have some nice family portraits turned into the most recent photo of Mitchell, used in any newspaper article and stored in his police file. In fact, it's the picture you most often see of Mitchell, and it's the thumbnail photo for this episode. It's one of the only photos she still has of him, after a safe of photos and old newspaper clippings was stolen years ago from her. When Ora got out of the hospital, she felt mostly on her own looking for Mitchell. She didn't even know how to get flyers distributed or printed, so she and her oldest son started handcrafting them and just sharing them, which is absolutely devastating to think about.
All I remember is that when I got out the hospital, there was no flyers, there was no push to me. And it's like, okay, God, I don't know what to do. I've never been in this situation before. I don't know how to do this. What can I do? So me and my son, my 7-year-old, sit down and wrote out a flyer to the point that we thought we were saying $10,000 and we were saying $100,000. That's all. That's how we got to me our first flyers out. And then it was a printing company in San Francisco. A couple of ladies, and I wished I could find them because they printed flyers, professional flyers, and they brought them to us. No cost, no charge. Then it was over 1,000 the first time, 500 the second time.
So I just want to briefly say, California listeners or internet sleuthers, if you are able to help me track down an LGBTQ plus owned print shop owned by 2 women in the 1980s in San Francisco that made flyers for Mitchell Owens free of charge, please let me know. If they are still out there, Ora would love to reconnect with them and express her gratitude. Their act of kindness is still with her to this day. So if you know, message me on Instagram or email me at simplertimecrimepod@gmail.com. I want to talk briefly about the layout of Ora's apartment. I'll have a photo of the complex and her building on the Instagram, and you're going to want to check it out as you're listening to get a better sense of it. The complex was small, and so was each individual building. The buildings themselves had maybe a handful of apartments in them. Ora lived in a 2-bedroom ground floor unit, and this is how she described it. Now, I have a audio clip of her describing it, but she was showing me things with her hands while we were talking, which you don't have access to see. So here's how I'll describe it to you. You would go in underneath the stairs. So if you look at that Instagram picture, underneath the stairs, that is where the door was to her unit. You're going to see where there's ground floor windows. The suspected point of entry was a ground floor kitchen window. There was a small galley kitchen and dining area and living room all kind of in one area. And then when you went down the hallway, there was a bathroom to the left. Ora's bedroom was directly towards the end of the hallway, and then to the right was where all 3 boys slept. When Ora got out of the hospital, she understandably could not live there again.
Okay, I never went back to the apartment. I mean, I went back to the apartment building. I just never went back to that apartment. I moved upstairs to a small apartment, which it was only one way in. It was a door right outside my door. Like my door was right here, their door was right here. And the girl on the end, Diane, had 2 kids. So that was our life for about 4 years right there in that little box right there. Because I couldn't see myself moving because that's the last place he knew where we were. And I couldn't see myself staying in an apartment because I could never ever feel safe. I took nothing from that apartment to the other apartment. I left absolutely everything. Everything. Food, everything. I couldn't go back in. A few years later, they got me to go back in there, and I thought I was having a panic attack, but trying to hold myself together. And when I got outside and that guy looked to the other side, I was thrown up. I was just that, I don't know. I didn't go straight back to the apartment upstairs. We moved in, moved our stuff in, but I kept staying at my sister's house over here or my sister's house over, or accidentally like, oh, well, it's so dark out. I don't want to wake the kids up. They knew I just didn't want to go home too. But, yeah, don't wake the kids up. Just get a blanket and lay on the couch, or.
I think that really shows a mother's love right there, that she still stayed in close proximity to the apartment she was actually attacked in, just in the off chance that Mitchell would reappear so that he would know how to find her. So we've talked about the cop or cop impersonator who showed up to her apartment that evening. But if you look back in old newspaper archives, which again I'll have linked in the show notes, you'll see that another common theory is that Ora thought a man she encountered at a military base social gathering could have been the one to do it. As soon as I brought that up, Ora was shaking her head and wanted to set the record straight. So first, let me tell you what is reported on, and then I'll give you the context. Here is a direct synopsis from Mitchell's charlieproject.com page. It reads, quote, "She believes her attacker may have been a man she'd met the previous night at the Enlisted Men's Club at Moffett Field Naval Air Station in Mountain View, California. He offered to buy Ora a drink, but she declined and walked away. She thinks the man followed her home and then drove away when she reached her door. The man has never been identified. He is described as 6 foot tall with brown hair, blue eyes, a mustache, and tattoos on his arms. He was approximately 25 years old in 1983. End quote. Ora told me this really got misconstrued in the old newspaper articles, so no shade at Megan from the Charlie Project. She's just reporting off of what was published at the time. But Ora said that it was not the night before. Police were asking her to go through anybody she interacted with in the weeks leading up to her attack. So she was telling them about everything from, hey, I visited the grocery store at this time, to, yeah, I went to this club. So she mentioned this encounter, but it was not the night prior. It was a couple of weeks back on a weekend. And here's her recollection of what happened.
Going to the naval base and all that good stuff. Yeah. This was a couple of weeks before. I went out to the naval base, my girlfriend and I went out. At the time, I loved to dance. I met my husband dancing. I love to dance. And I'm glad I didn't let that incident steal that away from me. Actually, it made it more intense. It made it more my safe place. It made it more my go-to. But anyway, we went to the naval base to a little dance thing they had. Ended up doing a little dance thing, doing the dance contest. I didn't even know I was in the dance contest. Won it. I wasn't trying. Because I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I was having a good time. I knew how to dance, and I was dancing. After the dance, and they gave me the little 50 or whatever many dollars it was that I won. It was a guy that kept trying to get my attention, trying to buy me a drink. I don't drink. I didn't drink. That's what I told him. I don't drink. Said, now if you want to buy a drink, you can buy one of my friends a drink, but I don't drink. Thank you very much, and going on about my business. Somehow that got to be the main part of my life.
The reason why the conflating news stories and context, why it's so important is because what does that description of that man from the Air Force Base sound like to you? The composite and the description of the abductor released to the papers. And what Ora is saying is, no, I don't feel that strongly that it was him. I just mentioned him as a possibility. As far as him following her, she was just saying it's possible that in my travels, somebody followed me. In fact, when I asked her what her own theories were, she said she's at times considered that she was an unintended target and that somebody had beef with someone who lived there before her since she was only in the unit for a few weeks. Or that somebody had been watching her and she was just unaware of it. Police did follow up on the Air Force Base lead, but they never identified who that man was who wanted to buy her drinks that night. Shifting gears a bit here, I want to mention that Ora's large family was supportive. As you heard before, they let her crash on their couches, and she talked about how they really carried her through early on when she couldn't make heads or tails of anything. They would attend rallies and press conferences and other things Ora was doing to raise awareness. But with time, she said, her family seemed to be growing frustrated and sometimes even exhausted by her grief. She said she would show up to a get-together and suddenly it seemed like it was time for everybody to go. And at one point, she even overheard a relative saying they wondered just when it was she was going to get over it. But as hard as that was, Ora has an understanding now that people just didn't know how to be around her and sit with the grief she was encountering.
So at that point, I knew why they couldn't, just be around me and be comfortable anymore. And it wasn't their fault. They just didn't know how. And I ain't gonna blame them. I don't blame them for it. I just went on about my business. I went out in public with a smile on my face that you could not tell I was unhappy. But when I was at home, I was me. That means if tears rolling down my face, then I can't even see it's my hand in front of my face because I cannot handle it, then that's mine. That's mine and God's to have. Nobody else's.
This was an important piece to talk about because sometimes we don't discuss the impact and the ripple effect this can have on families. These situations do not just impact the immediate family. It can just have ripple effects and unintended consequences and create feelings and things that are difficult to manage. And so we wanted to talk about the messy part of it and how that can look over time. So you heard Ora, she turned inward. As she said, go about her day smiling and hold it together till she got home and just sob. And inside of her, she had this burning feeling of just resentment at the man who did this to her, who took her baby and who was ruining her time with her family and changing her whole life. And it was eating her alive until one day she had a profound and transformative moment with her brother.
I was having one of those episodes to the point that I just wanted to hurt something. And I don't know. My brother just walked in right at the right time, and he said, "I got you. You have this look, and I get it." And I said, "I just." He said, "Go ahead." And I said, "What you mean, go ahead?" He let me hit him and hit him and hit him until I fell on my knees and just said, "God, I forgive him. The man that hurt me is not in him. I forgive him. Because if I don't, I'm going to hurt myself. I forgive him." From now on, every day when I make a prayer, I'm going to pray for him out of hate, spite, whatever, but I'm going to do it. And I've done it ever since.
From there, she had to live for herself and her surviving children. She told me on the phone how she told her boys she was going to need to get a job outside of the home and that they were going to have to pick up some responsibility around the house and stay out of trouble. The area she was living in within Menlo Park and then East Palo Alto, it had begun experiencing a high level of crime. In fact, she told me that around that time, East Palo Alto was the murder capital of the country. And she said it was very important to her that her boys didn't get pulled out into the streets. So Ora got her license as a hairstylist, something she had already done often, and she got on her feet, building a large clientele of people who understood that she needed to be a mother first. And she built her business.
But after that happened, it's like, okay, I got to do something in life that's going to make me okay and make me be around the people that I want to be around. I always was doing hair, so I just went to school and got my license. Once I got my license, and I could see light. Couldn't breathe some days, some days, but I could see light. The more time went by, the more light I seen.
In February of 1984, a year after Mitchell's disappearance, another child abduction landed on the news. This time, it was the abduction of 10-year-old Kevin Collins from San Francisco. Kevin vanished from a bus stop he was waiting at to take him home from basketball practice. He has never been seen again. His case has strong suspects, but it has remained unsolved. Kevin's case caused a media blitz, and his parents leaned deeply into advocacy work, even establishing the Kevin Collins Foundation, which I've mentioned in other episodes on this podcast. Kevin's parents used to go out and work with families directly in the days following their child's abduction. It was early on in the search for his son that Kevin's father, David Collins, noticed Ora Owens was doing everything in her power to keep her child's name out there, but that Mitchell's case was gaining very little media attention. So he said to her something like this: "I'll tell you what, my son's case is front and center, and I recognize you are facing systemic barriers to getting your son's case out there. So what I can do is ensure that if Kevin's name is mentioned, Mitchell's is too. If my wife and I are mentioned as parent advocates of missing children, Ora, your name will be too. If there is a press conference for Kevin, we will talk about Mitchell too. And if there's something to attend, I'll be sure you're there."
And Mr. Collins kind of made my son piggyback off of some of the stuff that he was doing. So that made it a little bit better. And it wasn't until me and Mr. Collins decided we was going to call a press conference for them to even put him in the NCIC computer. It took them at least a year and something. And this was after John Walsh. All I was trying to do was to fight to keep his name out there, to keep his face. Yeah. So anything I was invited to, whether I was being a token Black person or just being a token standby, somebody, if I ran out of questions with this and I can ask her something, I did it. Even to a couple of the things I wasn't even invited to, I was there. I didn't care. I had no shame. I wanted to know what happened to my sons. So, like I said, I piggybacked off of other people when their kids came up missing. I went to whatever they said it was something for missing kids. I tried to be there.
David Collins also helped Ora get established with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, also known as NCMEC. And Ora told me over the phone that the first time she walked into a conference put on by them for other parents of missing or murdered children, She was just overcome with emotion. She felt seen. It was the first time she felt understood and that she could just be herself around people who understood also. She made close connections with Kathy Teague, the mother of missing Chicago child Vignette Teague. And she has lost touch with her over the years and would love the opportunity to reconnect with her as well. So, Kathy, if you're listening or someone is who knows Kathy, shoot me a message and I'll get in touch with you.
Those are the people that was I surrounded myself with that made me feel like I was safe for 8, 9 years. It's like I just didn't feel comfortable around nobody. I walked into the room with all those people and it's like, okay, something happened. Because I felt safe, I felt comfortable, I felt like I could let my guard down. I didn't feel like nobody was staring at me, waiting on the answer. It's like everybody knew where my heart was.
There are a few more things I want to touch on for this case that set it apart. And one of those things is that in the months and years after Ora's attack and after Mitchell went missing, Ora would sometimes get contacted with strange phone calls and incidents. So I want to break down the main ones. She would get threatening phone calls to start. They would say things like, I'm still watching you. You're lucky I don't come back to finish the job. You're lucky I don't come back for your other kids, things like that. And she said that oftentimes the police would tell her it was just somebody prank calling her because people could be cruel.
I don't know. All I know is every time I got ready to do a press conference or do a talk or a walk, because I had plenty of balloon raises, I walked from one part of the city to the other city to raise awareness. I went to all the little rallies they had in San Francisco for Kevin and all them guys. And each time it was always like a phone call a day or two before any of that stuff happened or a day after it happens. Like, yeah, like I'm still watching you or something. Or yeah, I can still get a kick out of knowing I made her day messed up, whatever. But like I said, after a while, I just after the glass thing, when I come outside and there's the bag of glass on the top of my car, what you call them? You know the buttons that you pin on yourself when you put the
Yeah.
kid one of his pins in there. After that, I was done. I said that if you gonna hurt me, you sure gonna hurt me. But you know what? You gonna have a hell of a time. Somebody gonna know you was over here this time.
So let me provide a little bit more context to that other story she was talking about. Basically, at one point, she was participating in this rally. She was going to be holding another event for Mitchell, and she found a bag of glass on her car with a picture, the little pins that she had with Mitchell's face on them. Those were in the bag of glass. And that's where she said she hit her point where she was like, you know what? You're not doing this to me anymore. She also had one other instance, and I have a actual newspaper clipping that kind of describes this that I'll have on the Instagram. But she was heading to an event with a law enforcement officer, and she realized she had left the flyers back at the house. So she was walking to the park that was just a few blocks from her apartment. And then she said, oh, I forgot these flyers. So she went back with this officer. And as she walks back, her door is wide open as if somebody had been in her apartment. So she panicked, and they ended up doing extra surveillance and looking around, and nothing else came of it, but it really spooked her. The one other incident I wanted to tell you about had to do with this reoccurring situation she was having with a law enforcement officer. Now, it was somebody she encountered. She didn't recognize him from before, but he was working for Menlo Park PD. And she said that he attended one of the rallies or one of the events for Mitchell. And then he sort of made a pass at her, kind of flirted with her, and she shut him down. And that after that, he started randomly pulling her over sometimes. He would just let her off with a warning. And that he seemed to be really bothered by the fact that she did not take him up on his advances. So she, at one point, she said that he said to her, don't ever let me see you out alone again. It was kind of like, threatening. And she didn't think a whole lot of it, it spooked her at the time, but she just kind of carried on. And then one evening, she did have an incident with her friend.
And he made a pass at me, and I told him I wasn't interested. So he told me don't ever let him catch me out by myself. And it's like, okay, fair warning. I mean, a few months later, me and my girlfriend we went somewhere over in Oakland. On our way home, I was taking her to Sunnyvale. We had just got off the Dunbarton Bridge. All of a sudden, lights on me. Okay, pulls over, and he walks up to the car, shines the light in my face, and said, "Didn't I tell you not to let me catch you out by yourself?" And my girlfriend sit up in the back seat and said, "What did he just say to you?" Then he told us to get on about our way, go home.
So it's likely that this is just another creepy man that Ora has encountered and has nothing to do with her actual attack. But it is worth noting because she had that encounter with law enforcement with the guy. Now, she didn't seem to recognize him as the guy who showed up at her apartment that night or anything like that. But again, we have to remember the fact that her memory is just sort of all over the place when it comes to the actual attack. So while she doesn't think it's particularly related, it is just kind of odd. But while we're on the topic of her experiences with law enforcement, I want to add something that this was not the only bad encounter she had with them. In more so, it was just the way they spoke about her and her son. Some of the officers at the time, she said that at one of the rallies, at one of those press conferences she held, her mom was talking on the side to one of the officers, kind of putting pressure on him, like, why aren't you doing more to find Mitchell? And that's when he said to her, "You are poor." Mitchell was poor, black, and on welfare and didn't matter. That was the quote he said. And it was reported in one of the papers that he said something along the lines of, "She should just be happy she has one less mouth to feed." So, yeah, let that sink in. But still, Ora had grace for them.
I couldn't get mad, so I just thought maybe they just frustrated too. Me calling and showing up and calling rallies and making it look like they had something to do with it. Maybe they frustrated too.
I give Ora credit, but if you listen to the episode I released just before this with retired NYPD cold case detective Robert Klein, he will tell you that when you're working a case like this, you are working for the family and you hold responsibility to them. One thing I wanted to know from Ora is, had they ever brought any viable suspects up to her? And she said, yes, just once in the 80s, they showed her a photo of someone, and she couldn't identify the person as her attacker. It was definitely different than the best practices we know now about photo arrays and lineups. They just showed a singular picture to her and asked, like, is this the guy that did this to you? And she couldn't be sure and didn't feel strongly either way. When I recently talked about Mitchell's case over on TikTok, some people commented wondering about the Golden State Killer, also known as Joseph James D'Angelo. This wasn't an area that he operated in specifically, but there are some interesting overlaps. D'Angelo was a law enforcement officer at one point, and he may even still have had access to a uniform. In 1983, it was a break in his attack pattern, and he certainly was known to enter through windows and attack like this. He would have been really young at this time, so I asked Ora, has she ever looked at any old photos of him, just out of curiosity, and she told me, no, I don't look at standalone pictures like that. I only want to see one in a lineup or because officers have DNA or physical evidence that really proves it, because my memory just isn't strong enough because of how my brain fragments things and the mixture of trauma memories I have. So that made sense to me.
I've never wanted to look at a picture unless they presented it to me. I didn't want to feed into it.
Right.
I didn't want to be looking so hard that I seen them just because I'm looking for them.
For sure.
I wanted them to be able to sit me down and do a lineup or paper lineup, however they do it, and ask me, is it this person or this person?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be, because if you look at enough stuff, you can pick out certain things and put them on
Sure.
people and the thing, you got that person you're looking for just because.
Now, this isn't to say that Ora hasn't tried unconventional things. Back in the 80s, law enforcement took her to get hypnotized. She thought of seeing a psychic but decided against it. However, she did once have a strange encounter at an airport.
Passed a lady in the airport, and all she did was touch my arm. And she said something to me along the line that he's not dead. Somebody got him that can't raise kids. I mean, can't have kids, and they raised them. And she kept walking. I don't know if she knew me from the news, maybe, or something.
Ora has never stopped looking for answers for Mitchell. In the middle of all of our conversations, Ora took a trip out to Menlo Park to meet with current cold case detectives. She now has a strong point of contact there, and cold case investigators give her updates on the case a couple of times a year, and they're always willing to follow up on her leads. So she feels like she has a better relationship with law enforcement now than she did back then. When she was out there this time, they talked about some things that they were doing to further her case. For one, they're checking genealogy sites to see if there's any trace of Mitchell out there on those. On the forensic side, they are retesting evidence. And yes, there is some. According to Ora, and then also a recent news story for the anniversary piece that I read, they are testing the tweezers/shears that she had reached for during the attack, and they believe that they may have trace amounts of the perpetrator's blood on them. They're also retesting the phone cord for DNA evidence as well, and that could be a game changer. Ora also filled me in on another lead. There was a woman who had tried to get in touch with her on Facebook, but Ora admits she's not the most tech savvy with Facebook, and she has a few different Facebook accounts because she's gotten locked out of some, so she never actually saw the message. So this woman got in touch with her niece, who turned the lead over to Ora, who then promptly turned it over to Menlo Park PD. The lead is that there is a man in his late 40s in a mental health facility who looks a lot like Mitchell. And I asked her to tell me what about this man looks like him, what is making her think that it could be Mitchell.
Because he got the scar that's here. And he said he got it at a bus stop. That's where my son fell and hit his face right there and got that scar. He's about the right age. And if you look at the picture, I mean, the mouth and nose area kind of favors, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just wishing and hoping for the end. So maybe I'm reading more into it, but all I got is hope.
Police took this lead very seriously, and they were ready to hop on a plane and go collect this man's DNA, and they were excited for all of it. And just before that was to happen, they got some bad news.
That's where it stands. At first, we thought we had to go ahead. They had tickets, reservations all ready to go. But a couple of days beforehand, it got back to us that he said he didn't want to participate. So can't force him. But I was hoping maybe he seen the video, and if he really didn't know where he came from, he wouldn't mind. But if he had some glimpse of where he came from and his parents, I can understand why he wouldn't.
So, right now, that lead isn't scratched off, but it is kind of stuck. Ora did a balloon release while she was in Menlo Park earlier this month, and she did it right outside of the apartment on Pierce Road, and she had a bit of a goosebumps moment.
This is so weird. It was like once we released the balloons, all of them went to one spot, just where he disappeared at. I promise you, all the balloons just circled and went to one spot. Now, everybody had a balloon that was out there, but I released one at a time because we was releasing how old he was. So I held on to the last four and tied them together because he was 4 years old when he disappeared. But they literally went to that same position and they just circled and kept going up and up and up. I'd never seen balloons go up that high before in my life. I really haven't. And I'm not just, actually, I got goosebumps.
Ora is not only committed to finding Mitchell, she wants to raise funds to help other families and to put together events to help uplift other older missing persons cases. If you are an organization interested in any type of partnership with her on that, please be in touch with me and I can help connect you. But in the meantime, she is doing it grassroots style, just like she's always done. And I'm going to link a GoFundMe account she has for this purpose in the show notes. Ora has continued on with life with a piece of her heart always missing. She's watched her other boys grow up. She's happily married now, and the way she talks about her husband, you can tell he's super in her corner. Something Ora really, really, really deserves. She's had some health scares and she's bounced back from them, and she has this radiance and kindness about her that it just makes me feel lucky to have met her and connected. To close out this episode, I wanted to ask Ora what she most wants people to know as they digest the case of her attack and Mitchell's disappearance.
Well, like I was saying, I'm not looking for revenge. I'm not looking for nobody to go to jail. I just want answers. I want closure. I just want to know what happened to my son. I know there's somebody out there that knows something. Even if the person is dead that did this to me, his mama, sister, cousin, best friend, girlfriend, somebody he had a crush on, he told somebody. Somebody knows something. Even if you don't know the full story, just tell what you know. We can put it together. We just need answers. I would love to have seen him grow up. I have two healthy, big, strong young men. I think all of them would have been about the same size. I mean, Michael might have been a little bit bigger. Because when he was about 4 years old, he already looked like he was a little mini build bodybuilder. I think he would have been special. I think he would have been special. I often think we would have been different. Yeah, I often think it would have been different. Because before he disappeared, I was signed up to go to Kenyatta College. I was ready to do something else. But yeah, I would like to know what he'd been like in high school. I'd like to know what he'd been like with his first girlfriend. I would like to know if he's married by now, how many kids he had.
If you have any information on the attempted murder of Ora Owens and the abduction of Mitchell Dion Owens, please contact the Menlo Park Police Department at 415-858-3300. I want to thank Ora Owens so much for her vulnerability in sharing her story and trusting me with it. Please honor everything that took of her by sharing this episode far and wide. As I told Ora, I'm not going anywhere. I'd love to continue to help in any way I can. So if you have thoughts on the episode or anything as a listener, please feel free to reach out. This has been another episode of A Simpler Time True Crime. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, please leave a 5-star review on your preferred listening platform. I also have a Spreaker supporters club that you can join. It gets you ad-free episodes while listening in the app or while logged into your Spreaker account. I will also be adding periodic bonus episodes, and there is one in there now. As always, thank you so much for listening, and join me again next Monday.